Well, I'm your acting chairman today. John Gonquin, I'm the chair of the planning commission, so we'll get this, the December 13th meeting of the Community Development Committee. I'll call this meeting to order. And we want to just do introductions quick.
Thomas Hill with United Way.
Sam McDonald, member at large.
Linda Klebe, member at Yard.
John Gonquin, planning commission.
Ken Enixon, member at large.
All right. We need to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the October 15th meeting minutes.
So moved.
It's been moved. Did I have a second?
Now second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Public comment. Do we have any public comment on for today's meeting, or is it topic related? No public comment. All right, announcements and interests. Presentation by the Cultural Liaison Officer, Vince?
Yeah, as Vince is walking up, I'll just introduce him real quick. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to meet Officer Kemp and the programs that they run, but he has suggested that it's good timing to do a presentation of some of their work, and he's also going to be presenting to some of our other boards and commissions. But you'll see if any other department is working in community development realm, it'd be Officer Kemp's program is very much the boots on the ground, helping get the work done on the streets.
Thank you. Turn it over to you.
Okay, so I know that I'm limited in time, so I'm covering not everything that we do, but I'm trying to hit just the major parts. So I work with the Fargo Police Department. I'm part of something we call the Community Engagement Team. It includes myself as the cultural liaison and also 3 community trust officers. And currently, the team looks like this. We have Lieutenant Bill Offelt, Kevin Pallas is our sergeant. I'm the cultural liaison. David Carlson, Matt Niemeyer, and Michael Bloom, who's famous for rapping, is our community trust officers. My position is structured so that I mainly work with culture. However, I don't limit myself to racial culture or country of origin culture. I feel that a culture is any group of people that share values, beliefs, and ways of doing things. So I feel free to work with anybody. So part of our job, a big part, is building relationships, and I probably spend more time with new Americans than any other group. I also act as the person that instructs the officers about cultural issues within the community as well. And my overall goal is pretty simple. It's just to help people succeed. The Community Trust Officers, this is a newer program that's about 3 years old. And their job is to build trust within the community and law enforcement. They also work very hard for building relationships within the community, and their focus is primarily on youth, to provide positive influences for youth and to prepare youth for a successful future, which seems like they're following what I do, helping people succeed. We have many programs that we've started, especially over the last couple of years. One is survival swimming lessons for kids. This was started after I was actually working a presidential protection detail, and all of a sudden my phone started ringing constantly. Luckily, I was in a position where I could answer the phone, and there had been in the region, but not within my jurisdiction, a New American child that drowned. And because of my relationship with leaders in the community, they called me because they knew me, and they had some questions, and the cultural leader was sitting with the family, and I was able to put them in touch with the people that they needed to talk to. But that's what started me thinking about the swimming lessons, and as a solution to maybe this is something that we need in order to prevent death in the future, particularly among the New American population that swim. Around 50% know how to swim, whereas the population at large, it's more like 80 to 85%. So we've started this swimming lessons program for New American kids back in January. In January, West Fargo Police also created a cultural liaison officer. So between the two programs and the class I have got going right now, we should be, by the end of this year, 200 kids have got level 1 swimming lessons with the emphasis on survival. Officer Carlson has an outdoor recreation program. His own hobbies all relate about outdoors, and he feels that there's a lot of kids that need to get away from screens, whether it's on a computer, on a TV, or on their cell phone. So he provides opportunities for young kids that have never maybe gotten the opportunity, and likely not would have the opportunity to learn things like canoeing, kayaking, hiking, fishing, and this summer was the first time that program went into effect. I have an art program for New American adults. This was set up so that I office out of the Adult Learning Center, and where most of the New American adults learn English if they don't already know how to speak English. And in order to connect with them, I have done presentations, but it got to the point where I needed like 13 interpreters in order to reach the lower level students. So I came up with this program so that we can spend some time together, build relationships. Communication is not an issue because and this is a partnership with Creative Plains, and they provide the instruction and the supplies. I provide the New Americans with transportation to get there, and I'm the person that recruits, so they get to do various, once a month, a different art project. So here we have survival swimming lessons. I have some photos. We work with Concordia, Fargo Parks, Hulbert Aquatic Center, and Family Wellness. Currently, we're doing our lessons at the Y. Here's some pictures of the kids. Some of them get to be brave enough to go off the diving board in the deep end, and they only have 4 hours of instruction. So that's what we provide, and through donations from Salmons Financial, who decided to underwrite this entire program, and I was thrifty enough to get it to go for 2 years as opposed to 1 year. So we're fully funded for 2020 as well. Here's some pictures for the outdoor program. This is the bus that we used to transport the kids. They had professional fishermen teach them how to fish. We had Shields and Cabela's, both provided free tackle and fishing rods for the kids, and they got to keep those. It wasn't borrowing, they get to keep them. And we took them out to Silver Lake and did some fishing as well. The young girl here caught the biggest fish of the day. She was quite pleased with that. And we also had Lindenwood Park. We did a camping situation where we taught them how to put up tents, take down tents, cook over a fire, start a fire, even if they don't have matches or a lighter. Some of the kids got to see a deer within about 10 feet, and some of them had never seen a deer before on one of our hikes. Here's some pictures of the art program. We have done, in this one, we're doing a loom scarf. It was cold that day, so a scarf was something very applicable for the weather outside. I have actually been talked into teaching some of the classes since I like to work with leather, and we had the opportunity to do last year a coin purse, and they stamped and designed each piece. We've worked with clay twice now, and they've enjoyed that. Officer Niemeyer and I in the community engagement team are part of the Explorers program, even though that's not technically a engagement team event, but I just bring it forward because it's only, this is our third year of having an Explorers program back into, with the Fargo Police Department, and last year was the first year that we actually had a new American in the Explorers program, and this year we have a couple more, so I think that is going well. And last year was the first year that we actually competed against hundreds and hundreds of Explorer programs that have a longer history with us, and we actually placed in 3 events in our first time at the Rochester Conference. Summer camp. This is a camp that we have developed. I think this will be our 4th year that we have the camp coming up next summer. This program was designed for some kids that have had behavioral issues in school. And it was found that at the beginning of school, we had a lot of issues with the kids in school. As the school year went on, those behavior problems got better. However, over the summer, things would slide and we would be starting the same thing again. And we do this in conjunction with the behavior specialists with the school and with our school resource officers. But we have a 2-month program during the summer where they continue to work with the same school resource officers, the same behavior specialists in the school, so that they maintain that relationship. And all reports that I get back from Officer Niemeyer, who heads up this camp, is that it's been very successful in reducing behavior issues in school. This is a program that's by invitation only. It's kids that are recommended by the school. So they get opportunities to do a lot of different things, from swimming to they continue their education during the camp, and sometimes they get to even go to Microsoft and visit that place, and we like to plant the seed that, and if you've been there, the place is awesome, but plant that seed that this is a possibility for you. You could work at a place as nice as this, and all it takes is putting in the work at school. We have some fun events that are just for building relationships. Officer Bloom has had Fargo United now for 3 years. This year, West Fargo has also had a West Fargo United event. We just have a gathering in a park, and we feed the people. We entertain them with Officer Bloom singing and dancing. I don't do any of the singing myself. We have a lot of donors that provide prizes, and they're handed out, and we see it as a strong benefit because, especially within certain cultures, their experience with authority figures has not been so nice in the past. So anytime that things are going well and things are fun and it's with the police officer, we view that as a win and building relationships. So here's Officer Bloom with some kids at a Fargo United event. We have local churches that provide bouncy houses, and sometimes they provide food or cooks for making the meals. And now we've been reaching out into the schools with Fargo, or It's Time assemblies, and these assemblies, now we've gone to every middle school and high school in Fargo. And Officer Bloom has various musical groups come in. DPB, David Paul Brooks, has been with us since the beginning. And last year, we had Chris Singleton speak, who his mother had been killed in a school shooting in the Carolinas. And he has really come a long way, and he talks about that event, and that was a very popular event and uplifting for the students. This year, the focus was on mental health, and that people should not be ashamed of having an issue with mental health, and if they need help, if they feel stressed, they should reach out, and if they don't have a professional that they can reach out to right off, start the ball rolling by speaking with someone that you trust and work from there. More pictures of the school assemblies. We've even got some of the teachers to go into a dance contest. This is a big part of our programming. The people we serve often do not have the transportation to get to our events. So, and with the swimming lessons in particular, we will come to their home, pick them up, bring them to the event, and bring them back. So we don't want to have the lack of transportation to keep someone from being able to engage with the police department and those who partner with us. We have a gaming trailer that we unveiled at the Fargo Police Picnic last year. The idea is if we ever have any free time, we would like to go out to the parks in warm weather, bring up the gaming trailer and set it up where we have non-violent video games. The kids seem to be drawn to our trailer. They like to play the games. They engage with the officers. We also have basketballs and soccer balls and things like that so that the officers can interact with the kids in a fun way. And we haven't used it as much as we'd like to because we've been busy, but it seems to be a big hit, and we want to continue with that. Probably the biggest news within our community is now what used to be PD3 is now what we're calling the Community Engagement Center, and we're going to base a lot of our programming out of that building. It's attached to Fargo Cass Public Health at 1230 25th Street South. This is where we're going to do a lot of our programming. We decorated the outside so that people will feel welcome. I've already had cultural leaders meetings there. We've had self-defense classes for teenagers held there as part of a project that we're running with trying to keep kids engaged. And in order to do that, you need to know what it is that motivates them. I can't say, I want you to play this sport, or we'll do this art project. It may not interest them. So we find out what motivates them. So we have a basketball camp, we have a self-defense class, and we have boxing that we have set up. And those classes are kept pretty full at all times. We're looking at also creating I'm looking at seeing if I can get funded. I'm working on that now, but a Drawn to Culture class where the class starts talking a little bit about culture, and someone would bring in an object that they would then draw. So that would be the subject of an art class on drawing. And unlike the adult program, this program I want to be where we start at the beginning, go to level 2, level 3, and we will take these same individuals as far as we can to build real talent, because all it takes is setting your mind to do it and practice, and then having somebody willing to teach you the skills. And we're hoping that some of the people that are not motivated by boxing or self-defense or basketball would now have something within the art realm that they would feel motivated to want to do. Some of us do silly things like Dave Carlson rappelling off the Black Building in partnership with Charism. Here's Officer Bloom at when he first unleashed his first video called Unity. Here's a picture of a group of our swim students. Officer Carlson and I are with them. And Matt Niemeyer, who's the head of our school summer camp. And then again, our leaders are Lieutenant Offelt and Sergeant Pallas, and they enjoy spending time with the kids at the Fargo United events as well. And we also like to thank a lot of the people that work with us, who provide us with services or supplies or just support with challenge coins. And we thought that the community engagement team should have our own. And we had a contest amongst some kids, and a 12-year-old girl designed the back of this coin, the part with the hands that are grasping each other. And now she won the contest, and forever the Fargo community engagement team will use this coin to thank people that have either made donations or helped us within our program. And like I usually do, I probably went a little over. So does anyone have any questions?
I think one question I have, so I would assume that you work close with the resource officers that are in the high schools and junior highs.
Yes, the same, Sergeant Pallas currently oversees both the school resource officers and the engagement team.
Okay.
So currently, right now, we have 2 different lieutenants. However, we are restructuring that, and we're all going to be under the same lieutenant and the same sergeant in 2020.
Great. Any questions? Well, thank you. This has been real interesting. Thank you for what you do with the community.
Well, I just thought I'd come here and
Yes.
build a relationship with you guys, and if there's anything that you guys need, feel free to contact me. We partner with, we don't really do what a lot of people think of as police work. We do that some of the time, but we're really open-minded and really looking at stretching things to new areas that we've never done before. So if anybody has any ideas, wants connections with somebody within some of the communities I work with, let me know.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, we have another presentation by Jan Eliason.
Yeah, maybe as Jan and Cody are coming up, we often in this time of year, you'll see it in the newspapers as well as the cold weather. Jan is the director of the Gladys Ray Shelter, and is a big advocate and leader in our community as it relates to the sheltering needs in our community. Often, this invitation for Jan and Cody came about in conversation with Commissioner Strand, wanting to learn a little bit more about the needs in the winter, and especially we know many of the shelters go into overflow. And in addition to that, we recognize that we have partners in our community. Jan helps lead the City of Fargo's voice as part of that discussion, and recognizing all of the shelters serve different needs. Cody, we've asked Cody, thought this would be a good time to kind of remind us about the CARES program, and he can explain a little bit more about that, but again, how vital it is to the community as a whole and for the whole sheltering system to work as a network. And so with that, Jan and Cody.
Thanks for the opportunity. First of all, Jan asked me to go first because some of the things I'm going to say she's going to build upon. So I'll try and move quickly through my portion. I would be remiss as the director of the coalition not to remind you all who we are as a coalition. We are the FM Coalition to End Homelessness, with our mission being to end homelessness through achieving those achieving permanent solutions to prevent and to end homelessness. And so we work collaboratively with advocacy, because we are stronger and better if we talk to you all and to the community and to other leaders in the community as with a more common voice as in partnership. We also know that we can't end homelessness unless we have education, very good trained service delivery here in our community, and so we want all of our providers to have the best training, so we set that as a goal. And then collaboration, pretty much everything that we do, we seek to do collaboratively, and the CARES process that I'm going to talk about is one of those key things that has been what the coalition has been a part of for our community. I'll just also mention it's the end of our 30th year, and we're really proud of the growth that's happened with the coalition, where we came into being out of sort of an emergency crisis in 1989, and now have come to be about not just responding to crisis, but being a group looking to actually do big systems change. So thanks for the opportunity today. CARES is the Coordinated Access, Referral, Entry, and Stabilization System, hence we use the acronym CARES. It actually started with a different acronym and has grown into this to really reflect who we are and what we're doing as a system. CARES is made up of 4 lead partners. So lots of smaller partners on the ground, so to speak, the people who are actually doing the work. But from that leadership level, we have 4 key partners. The North Dakota Continuum of Care, the West Central Minnesota Continuum of Care, the FM Coalition, and White Earth Nation. We're one of the only coordinated entry systems in the country to be not only dual COC, but also involving a local coalition and a tribal partner as we do. So the CARES system is our homeless response system for the community. So it's a response to homelessness that's made up of streamlined services and evidence-based best practices, which is really important to remember. This is about tearing down silos and working together and doing what we know works. This isn't about what we think works, it's what we know works and what's been proven. And we also try to constantly collect data along the way to be able to reflect and make sure that we are ourselves evidence-based. It's not just what others have told us is evidence-based, it's what we're also producing in our community. It's also our approach in our community to the coordinated entry requirement that is a part of HUD funding, and by result also some state funding for Minnesota and for North Dakota. So what it does is it takes our scarce resources and helps us manage them more effectively and more efficiently. It's more full of transparency. Everything we do is data-driven, and we try to be as consumer-centered as possible. That is part of the philosophy that we have, including Housing First. And it allows us to make consistent decisions. And so I'm going to talk about a little bit more about that in just a second. But then also, it's made up of mandated partners, so anybody who's getting some of those funds need to participate. But then over the years, we've had a number of individuals in our community, other organizations, who have come to the table and been a part of it, including the Cass County Sheriff's Department has also come a part of the program. And they don't receive money that make them a part of it. They've just recognized that it was really important for them as a part of discharge planning from the jails to be able to be a part of this system. So we've really torn down a lot of walls and silos and been able to create a more unified system across our community. So coordinated entry, ultimately, I've pretty much already described it, but it is that we have those designated access points so that individuals who are seeking, who are in housing crisis, can access what they need to in this coordinated system. That we're using standardized assessment tools, so one agency isn't assessing people differently from another agency. It's a Housing First approach in all of the programming that we do, and then also it prioritizes the assistance that we have, so that those who are the most vulnerable, those who have the highest acuity, are those who are going to be needing that. Looked like I had a timed slide in there. So just to mention as to what coordinated entry is, here we are. These individuals are all homeless, but they are not a homogeneous group. Likewise, these shelters and or supportive services all serve persons who are experiencing homelessness, but they are not identical. So what CARES helps us do is match the unique needs of individuals to the unique program services that are available in the community. I'll quickly go over this real quick, just to say that why do we do this? Well, we do it, the last one there says it's a requirement, yes, but I'm very proud to say that our community was working to implement coordinated entry before it became a requirement of the federal government, so we feel like we were pioneers. However, when we did have that requirement came to our community, what it meant is we had to change how we were approaching that. So we couldn't just do it as Fargo-Moorhead, we had to bring all of West Central Minnesota Continuum of Care and all of North Dakota sort of along for the ride as we did it on our community. But ultimately, it improves the quality of care and it prioritizes the needs and the resources in our community. And I can make sure that you all get a copy of these slides as well if you'd like to look at them further. So why do we collaborate in our community? Why do we have that all those partners and those 4 lead partners? It's because people experiencing homelessness frequently move across the border. They're moving across the river and across the state and the region all the time. And so, also across those tribal borders. And so we wanted to be able to create something that had more of a seamless flow of access to homeless services and programs, and get rid of those geographic borders. So it doesn't matter that we're a community of 2 counties, 2 states, 4 school districts, and nearby tribal borders. We are creating one system that really works in this regional capacity. We didn't do this willy-nilly. I won't go through all these, and I'll just share them with you all later, and they're also on our CARES website. But ultimately, you have here our guiding principles that were established in 2013 when we started doing this work. Also, here's a list of a variety of the things that HUD says make a good coordinated entry system. I'm really happy to say that we pretty much check all these boxes, and not just saying, oh, we did that, so we checked it. We really do work to make sure that things, that prioritization is key, low barriers, housing first, person-centered, that there's a lot of equality and equity in the system. So, and that we're also using our data. So there are basically 4, depending how you count, 4 or 5 stages or steps in our CARES system. The first one is that triage step. The second one is prevention, housing assessment, and assignment. Triage because we want to try and see if we not only want to get people to the right place, but we also want to maybe keep people out of the system. And we call that diversion. We're trying to find better ways to talk about it because diversion's a funny word, and it sounds like we're kicking people out. No, what we're trying to do is help people problem solve so that they would be able to find, so if they have other options that will keep them out of the homeless system. For instance, one of the examples we oftentimes use is, would a food basket or some minor assistance keep someone from getting evicted and thus being able to stay in their home rather than entering the shelter system? Those kinds of things we want to be able to do at that front end. That's all part of that prevention piece as well. Then as far as housing assessment, we want to make sure that everyone is assessed and then assigned to the appropriate housing intervention and resource. And then kind of in wrapping all of this is what we call stabilization. If someone doesn't have those proper supports once housed, they're just going to end up back at step 1, so we want to be able to do that. Here's sort of a map. This maybe makes a little bit more sense. As folks enter the system, we want to be able to problem solve with people and help them have those self-guided resolutions. We want to be able to get folks to those prevention resources, and if they need homeless services, then that they clearly have some paths through the system, whether it's domestic violence, whether they're unsheltered, whether it's imminently homeless, being discharged for someplace, that we properly assess them and guide them through low, moderate, and high need, and again, sort of that wraparound with stabilization. So that this really encompasses that entire system from beginning to end. And what's interesting is we were rock stars, I think, in the beginning of implementing this system with really the assessment and the assignment stage, because that's where the HUD requirement came first, to say you need to have this by a certain time. So we did this, and now we realize, we're like, wow, we're doing really good on that, and we are making progress, but where are the places why we're not making progress? Oh, it's because we're not doing a good enough job with prevention, with that triage front end piece, and so now we're trying to really work and build those systems. So that leads me to the last part, before I turn it over to Jan, is to be able to say some really exciting things that we've done. First of all, and this is all without HUD mandate, it's kind of on the suggestions, and we'll see where HUD makes us do it in the future, but we're ahead of the game when it comes to this in our own community. So first of all, is shelter bed prioritization. Starting in the winter of 2017, we started being able to assess, and then shelters being able to fill beds, not on first come, first serve, but those who had the highest acuity or vulnerability. So that system evolved. All the shelters, if you call one of the shelters, you're going to be able to get put on that common list, and all the shelters are then sharing that same list and can see that same data. What that's also doing is collecting for us some better data about who's entering shelter. Rather than trying to pull it from each agency, we actually have that common shared list and common data. The second thing that I'm really proud of that we're working on is started talking about it and trying to put it together in 2017, really fully tried to do it starting last year, was for our collaboration around prioritization around prevention. So what we did was we got together and we realized that we have very limited funds to be able to provide assistance to individuals to keep them housed. particularly directly that housing assistance part. And so what we did was we said, well, where do people go for help? And where are the resources? So we mapped it out and said community action on both sides of the river makes sense for them because that's where folks go for help first, and then they start going to other places. What if we make it simpler by saying, just go to community action, depending which side of the river you're on, you're gonna fill out the same application, you're gonna go through sort of the same assessment, and then we put all that into a common shared list where both community actions, along with presentation partners in housing, the Salvation Army, and we're trying to find other partners with other assistant to come around that list. They do some case conferencing, and what they are doing is they're trying to help who they can, when they can, and also use that money that is limited by the border. Okay, let's help people with that, but then we also have money like Presentation Partners or Salvation Army that's borderless. How can we round out, how can we use all of those dollars effectively? So they're making those decisions. Unfortunately, we still don't have enough resources to help everybody. About 76% were turned away in 2018 just due to the lack of resources. However, through this data that we're collecting, we're also seeing that not a lot of those individuals are then ending up in shelter in the end. So some of those folks that we're diverting out of that assistance are very resourceful and are figuring out. Doesn't mean that we can't do better or that those individuals aren't still in trouble or in crisis. It just means that we know that when people are being turned away that they are finding other resources, but we need to improve upon that and find out more about what's going on with them so that those individuals don't eventually cycle back into homelessness in the future. And then what this is doing, as I've said a couple of different times, is it's providing us really valuable data so that we can improve and make this system better. So that ends my portion of things. Oh, one more thing is to say that we're really excited about this, I forgot about this, is that we're gonna be working with FirstLink. We've already started the ball rolling, and in 2020, it is our hope that anybody who's looking for those prevention resources, if you're in housing crisis, people are already calling 211. We're hoping that 211 will partner with us, and we've started that process where they'll start some of the screening before they actually apply for assistance at community action. So we're hoping that. We also hope in the big picture that it's not shelter staff that are taking those shelter calls, but that we have specialists who are helping folks think through all of their options, whether they actually need shelter or not, or if they have other places to be. And that may happen at 211 if the resources are available, because it's a very expensive service. But we also then would be able to possibly do that someplace else. And so that's a little further down the road because that's going to take more resources. But FirstLink already is getting those calls, and they're like, actually the last meeting we had with them, they said, well, yeah, that we would love help dealing with the calls we're already getting, and then they're also calling Senka. Let's see if we can streamline that and make it a little bit more friendly. So that end goal is to really have those specialists available for both prevention and for those seeking shelter. So that'll be coming in the future. You bet, you bet.
Hi, I am here to talk primarily about some of the overflow challenges I think that we have in the wintertime with everybody in the shelter system, all of the different shelters. I wanted to build on what Cody talked about because what I love about about CARES is that it's creating a sort of a roadmap for us as we move forward. When the Gladys Ray shelter first opened, we didn't have a roadmap. And we started to find right away that all of these folks we were trying to connect to services weren't able to get connected, or even if they were, there was no place that they could go. So they came to the Gladys Ray, and very few could move beyond that because we didn't have the programs, we didn't have the resources, certainly didn't have the service coordination to help people move beyond the Gladys Ray. We were doing a great job of serving episodically homeless and the majority of people that ended up homeless, but then we had this little pocket of people that were considered chronically homeless that we just didn't have resources as a community to serve. We still have a long way to go with that, and I believe that even winter sheltering I don't believe that we're gonna have to keep having this discussion if we continue to stay committed to coordinated entry and diversion, all of those things. Obviously in the winter, the rules change a little bit. I think even with diversion, we know that, when somebody comes to the door of the Gladys Ray shelter, diversion or the prioritization list, a lot of that, just isn't as relevant when people come to the doors. So one of the things too that I think made CARES what it gained traction like it did because we already had a system that was working so well together. So all of the shelters work very well together. We talk on the regular about the number of beds people have, the number of people they're seeing for overflow, who should be where, because we do want to make sure that somebody who could be served at New Life Center is at New Life Center rather than at Gladys Ray and so on. We do have a number of folks who, we see them quite often in the winter, but they're living somewhere else in the summer, typically outside somewhere in our community, and then they're coming back in the winter months. And I think that that's also a symptom of the work that we still have to do. Currently, all of the shelters are very full. We don't have the Sheltering Churches program anymore, nor do we need that. I believe that with the expansion of New Life added a number of beds, everybody added a number of beds, except for us. So, and
New Life specifically they have some, with their remodel, had gained some spaces where they could do mats, and also being able to open up just their lobby with some chairs for folks to be able to be in to get out of the cold.
And that's an important point too, because that is what we're all doing. We every single day, at the end of the day when nighttime services begin, we're all trying to be as creative as we can be to make sure that people are indoors. At the Gladys Ray, if we are just absolutely so full, which we shouldn't ever be, we shouldn't have the overflow numbers that other shelters have, because we have a very specific role within the system, and that's to serve people that really don't have any other options and have been just have seen very little success in a more traditional system. So, but everybody is doing exactly that. If we have no place for somebody to even lay down anymore, which can happen, then just making sure people have a chair, anything, so that they stay warm and that they come indoors. People that have been sleeping in cars and so on. We really want to make sure that those folks get indoors for as long a period as we can. The city, last year, I guess we started asking the city for support for transportation. That's a big thing for the Gladys Ray, is making sure that we don't have a full service kitchen, so we want to make sure that people can get from the Gladys Ray to Churches United or New Life Center or some of those places, so they can get a full, like a warm meal before they come back to us. I guess that's about, am I touching on everything? I know we are considered a 35-bed facility, and let me tell you, if there's 35 people in that building, things start to get, pretty energetic, and we've had over 50 in the past 2 weeks. So we certainly have work to do as a community, and we certainly need support when it comes to prioritization and being able to house the people that I consider the most that we all consider the most vulnerable. I believe that the Gladys Ray shelter, we should be able to see less and less of a need for the Gladys Ray shelter the more we implement the CARES program, because the Gladys Ray is serving people that are the most likely to die outside, that are considered some of the most vulnerable among us. So CARES matters a great deal for us. Any questions?
Questions?
How have we been doing with the cold snap this fall? I mean, kind of from, I think, early. I mean, it was early on. I mean, we've been able to handle the number of people.
I think we are able to handle it. It's certainly not an ideal situation, I guess, but the community's amazing. We have people dropping off gloves and hats and hand warmers and things to help people stay as warm as possible. And then, of course, blankets and socks and things so that when they are in the building, they can take some of those comforts. I think some of what's difficult for us is that when people are able to be there throughout the entire day and into the evening, everybody starts to get a little stir crazy, and that's when things get a little hairy, I guess. But I think it's going to be a challenging winter. It was certainly challenging last year. We had to rely on other shelters we started asking other shelters to make extra pans of food, and then because it was just such a difficult winter. And I don't believe I'm not suggesting more shelter is the answer, because it's not. Housing is definitely the answer. And now we're starting to see more and more housing. However, we still need some of the housing supports. The population at the Gladys Ray is very unlikely to sustain housing or stay housed without some of the supports that they need in order to do so.
And I'll just piggyback on what Jan said as far as we are making progress, I think. I don't have any Cass County numbers, but I know the West Central COC in Clay County specifically, we're seeing that basically what they've been reporting is that we're housing folks and we're doing a really good job and seeing success, but that rate of new homeless, et cetera, are basically almost parallel to the progress that we're making. And so that's where, and this is just my plug for some of the work that I get to do on the coalition side, is that we have to look at that bigger picture of those systems change. We need to look at affordable housing. We need to look at employment. We need to look at the permanent supportive housing for those who may not be able to be fully employed and need those extra supports for our chronic folks. And so we need to be able to look at the big picture. And as Jan said, shelter isn't the answer. It meets those immediate needs. I always say if we're going to cure cancer, we don't build more emergency rooms. We have to be able to look at the big picture and see what the actual solutions are.
Right, any other questions?
Well, I was going to say, I had the opportunity to help out a few times over the years when we were still doing the sheltering churches, and I think one of the benefits of that was it really forced the community to get engaged and educated. If you were involved as a volunteer with those things, you were required to do some minimal training, I think, or information. And my question is, how are you able to continue that process now that you don't have the Sheltering Churches program going anymore, as far as just continuing to engage the community and educate them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know what Jan's opinion is, but that's something that we wrestle with a lot in saying that was probably one of the best things that happened in our community was the attitude change that came from individuals who got to do that volunteer work. And obviously there's still lots of volunteer opportunities throughout the existing system, and so we want to encourage people to continue to do that. I think one of the things that we're talking about for the coalition the coming year is to figure out how to have individuals' lived experience to be able to get out in the community and talk about their experience, and that's been was a priority, probably been a priority for about over a year, but we're finally putting it on the front burner, so to speak, for 2020, because it is really important to be able to engage individuals, and hopefully that'll inspire folks to also volunteer and be a part of the solution.
I could maybe a comment, but also just a request to this committee as you think about the work that I think both of you have noted that it's kind of fluid and cross-border. I would really urge this committee to try and build more relationships with Moorhead too, and understand how can we as two committees utilize not only community block grant dollars, but any social service dollars to try and really assist in the building up and support of this entire system, because this is it's a public health issue, it's a community development issue, and I think the data that's been able to be actually drawn out by members of the coalition and providers demonstrates that exactly, Jan and Cody, your argument that long-term housing is the answer actually does pay economic dividends. And so just really urge this committee to think about how can we utilize funding in the most effective way to try and support this system overall, because it's definitely well worth it and it's the right thing to do.
I think you're exactly right, and I would add one layer to that to say that because we are a cross-border community, we do need to work, our cities do need to work together, and they do. Our partners already do, I think our cities already do. It needs to be stronger, but even more so then when we go to the state level, because that's where some of those pieces are. Federal, that's a whole other animal, and maybe we can make some progress there one day. But when it comes to some of, especially state resources, I say this all the time when I'm in Bismarck, and I've had the opportunity to talk to Housing Commissioner Ho over in Minnesota as well, to say, if we're going to end homelessness in either state or even in our community, the two have to work together. Oftentimes in Fargo, we have more housing available, but the supports are available in Moorhead and vice versa. And so when those things happen, if somebody, depending which side of the river you're on, you're not going to be able to keep all your services, or you have to start over. And coordinated entry has helped with a lot of that. But those funding streams sometimes say, no, you can't serve that person in Fargo with those Minnesota dollars, and vice versa. And so that's one of my long-term goals in some of the work when we advocate at the legislature in North Dakota, to say how can we make some of those state dollars more fluid. We might not be able with federal, but our state dollars, how can we use them more effectively? And Governor Walz has called for Minnesota to be the first state in the nation to end homelessness. Well, then I have flat out said to some of his staff and to Commissioner Ho, we're not going to do that if you don't figure out, Minnesota can't do that because a huge part of that population, or I shouldn't say a huge, but a part of that population is here in this border community, and we're going to have to figure that out. And it's interesting to see how they're starting to realize that really is an issue, partly because we have been so successful here and they've taken note. And both in Bismarck, but mainly in St. Paul, they've taken note of the good work that we've done up here and working across the border, and I think that it could be a model for our states to be able to work better together.
And I think too that I just have to always say this, I guess, but we already know how to end homelessness. Communities have done it all across the nation. So what I feel we need more than anything is for every individual and every commission and group and city leader to talk about how do we find the supports to implement those pieces that we're still missing. It costs a great deal to leave people homeless, and it costs far less to provide that housing, and that's been proven. The research is in, the numbers are in, it's been proven, and because it's been done in other communities, there's certainly no reason that we can't do it here in Fargo.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you again. All right. In our packet is the 2020 meeting schedule.
Yeah, Commissioner, we'll be sending out a survey as well. As you noticed, I think our pattern ended up being about a meeting every quarter or every other month or so. And we're assuming that while it's very beneficial to hear about the community programs, we're assuming unless there's kind of action or engagement that you would choose not to meet. And so we'll be sending out a survey just to kind of firm up our roles and intentions, if you will, and we'll be in touch with that shortly too. But for now, these are the dates as we go with the regular schedule that we have set forth.
Okay. All right, moving into staff reports.
Yes, Commissioner Strand wanted me to add, primarily if you get noticed in the community, or if people come to you seeking questions on the Social Service Fund grant applications. I know you've seen Tia's correspondence that I believe we've copied you on, as we've sent information out to our kind of typical members, our recipients, if you will. But the message is still not quite getting out there clearly that we've put that program on hold until we have the CDBG action plan identified and organized. And so if you do get those members from the public seeking information, don't hesitate to send them to myself or Tia as staff members. And then if anybody's watching this on TV, just again, a reminder that social service funds are local tax dollars, they're not federal funds. And so sometimes in people's mind, they're morphed all together. And right now we're trying to coordinate our priorities and goals as we assign those for the community needs as a whole. And then as we get that schedule kind of firmed up here in January, then we'll have that application process and coordination process for the social service funds as a support system to the federal program needs. So, so this is just kind of any questions on that? Or are you getting any feedback from the public on this? And I think primarily the folks that are coming forward or seeking information or maybe received a grant 10 years ago and are kind of just checking things out and figuring out what the program is, so maybe not our typical routine applicants. And then on the other items, CDBG home updates, HUD updates, I'll pass it off to Tia as our next steps.
Hello, everybody. A lot of overlap with what Nicole just said. So as you heard, we're currently working on our development of our 5-year plan, which includes the 2020 action plan for our HUD funds. The actual due date for this plan isn't until mid-August 2020, so we do have some time. We're currently in the stage of seeking public input among housing, economic development, and public service experts, as well as residents. So last month we did a number of focus groups visiting with each of these people. We got a really good turnout. Even our consultants were really proud of us and surprised at the amount of turnout that we got at each one of those, so that's really good. And currently, as you know, we're conducting a needs assessment survey. We have extended the deadline on that for another week, so this Friday will be the due date. And I'll do an email probably early tomorrow morning just to remind everybody that it's still out there and that we have a few more days left to do it, and it'll probably be open through the weekend too. And in addition to those online surveys, we've also pushed out some paper surveys now for some people that may not have had access to it online, so we're starting to see some of those come back too. And we hope to be completely wrapped up with all that data input within the next 30 days, and then with that and all the other input that we've been getting, we should start to get a pretty good idea of what our goals are going to be over the next 5 years and how we can spend those funds. So once that process is done and we have that better understanding, we'll be able to do like a project proposal request sometime later this winter. Once we know more details about that, like Nicole said, we'll make sure you guys get an update on that. So expect it in an email and on a future agenda. And I also have, Cody has some handouts too, so I'll just bring them up there for you. Do any of you have any questions?
Is there anything that we can do in the meantime while that data is being prepared to plug in all of these goals so that that RFP can be pushed out really quickly? Is there any work that we can do that would be helpful?
During this public input time, if there's anything that you feel like we should know as we're developing that process and maybe that request for proposals, important things that you might want to see in that, send it my way. Otherwise, right now, just getting that survey out and pushing it and helping clients and neighbors and anybody complete it so we can get a really accurate view on what's going on out there.
And as we, maybe just to add, as we start to get initial results, kind of picking back up where we left off with the Social Service Funds Committee. I know some of you served on that, but I've had some sidebar conversations with a few folks, and some aspect of a, I don't want to use the word retreat, but some sort of working committee where we could set as a committee and as a commission, set aside some time that's longer and maybe not up on the dais, but kind of a working session to talk about our findings in our deeper dive to see and confirm how those work and meet what you know in our community, and then as you see our role in, really where we're looking for your input, where you see our role in city governance and oversight and feedback to the mayor and the city commission as it relates to impact on those goals. So that's really looking forward to some deeper dive conversations with the commission as we have those discussions, probably early part of the year, as soon as we get this first pass at the work. And then maybe just as a wrap-up comment, I wanted to just kind of tie the bow, if you will, to the work that Jan and Cody are doing. They are a big percentage of our HUD funds that we use for FM Homeless Coalition, as well as social service funds, and as well as a big chunk of work of our 2019 work plan for Gladys Ray. So we're in the middle of working with the Gladys Ray with some physical improvements, modernizing, commercializing, I think about 150,000 or so worth of work for improvements to that facility. And so just wanted to kind of close that loop as we, I can imagine as a board member sitting there thinking, where's our role in this and how does it work? And it's really about prioritizing these services as it relates to housing in our community and how we can best help as part of the planning department and the tools we have.
Great. Any questions? All right, any other business, Nicole, to wrap up? All right, any other comments from board up here? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.